They didn't fire me. That would have made noise. Instead, they made me disappear quietly, surgically, and just slow enough that no one noticed. My name is Daniel Morgan. I'm 39 years old, and until that morning, I was the Director of International Strategy at Aeromax Dynamics, one of Canada's leading aerospace firms headquartered in downtown Toronto. I had spent close to a decade expanding the company's footprint into Europe, closing deals others couldn't, and spending more nights in airport lounges than in my own apartment. I wasn't just part of Aeromax's growth, I was behind it. But that morning, none of it mattered. The boardroom on the 14th floor felt colder than usual, not because of the temperature, but because of the stillness. There were no notepads on the table, no meeting trays from catering, no pre-meeting chatter humming in the air, just the envelope, white, thin, dead center on the table like it had been placed with a ruler in a quiet grudge. I stood there a moment longer than I should have, not because I didn't know what it meant I did, but because some part of me still hoped there was a mistake. That my name typed so neatly was just a formality. But I knew better. Mark Roy entered a few seconds later. He didn't smile, didn't sit, just walked to the far end of the room, hands in his pockets, eyes set on the window like I wasn't there. Effective immediately, he said, his tone as plain as the envelope. Your title has been adjusted to strategic liaison. Compensation has been revised accordingly. That was it. No handshake. No acknowledgement of the 13 months I spent securing the Aurora deal. No nod to the hundreds of hours logged from Frankfurt to Zurich. Just a vague title. And a pay cut sharp enough to feel personal. I didn't ask why. Not because I was confused, but because something colder had already crept up my spine. That quiet, calculated cold you only feel when a decision has been made behind your back. Rehearsed in conference rooms you were no longer invited to. Mark didn't explain, and I didn't give him the satisfaction of asking. I reached across the table and picked up the envelope, tucking it into my jacket without opening it. I already knew what it said. I stepped into the hallway, the hum of the office strangely loud now, and paused just outside the glass door to my former office. The nameplate was gone, not replaced, not misspelled, just removed like I'd never been there. Then Evan Lang passed by. He was wearing a tailored navy blazer, the kind you buy for first big promotions, and a lapel pin I hadn't seen before the new Global Initiatives badge. He smiled faintly at someone behind me, completely unaware or entirely unfazed that I was standing 10 feet away. He didn't slow down, didn't acknowledge me, just kept walking. I remember training Evan 2 years ago during his summer internship. He had asked questions, taken notes, stayed late, bright, eager, and a little too polished. At the time, I saw potential. Now I saw replacement. I watched the elevator doors close behind him, and for a moment I wasn't angry. I wasn't even shocked. I was something else, something colder. I wasn't erased in a day. They'd been preparing the bleach for months. You don't really understand how quickly you can be made invisible until you see your name disappear from a door you walk through every morning for nearly a decade. No under transition, no new title, just frosted glass where there used to be proof you mattered. I stood there too long, not because I expected someone to walk by and fix it, but because I didn't know if I was supposed to knock on my own door anymore. Behind me, someone cleared their throat. A young woman I didn't recognize, probably an intern, was balancing 2 trays of coffee, the kind they bring to exec meetings with someone else's name now leading them. "Can I help you find a room?" she asked politely. Like I was a guest, I smiled without teeth. "No, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Downstairs, the 6th floor buzzed with a different kind of energy operations. Logistics, shared desks and soft-walled cubicles. That's where they sent me. No view, no door, just a narrow aisle and a flimsy chair with questionable lumbar support. The cubicle had my name scribbled on a post-it note. "Daniel will get you set up by OD." No one had signed it. HR had handed me a box earlier. Daniel's personal effects. Inside were the pieces of a career I hadn't realized had become artifacts. A framed photo from the Zurich integration team, a worn keycard lanyard, and a branded mug from a Paris summit that now felt like fiction. I set it down quietly and opened the drawers. The bottom one was full of binders. My binders, or so I thought. The labels had changed. Each one had neat new tabs. EL, Phase 1. EL, Risk Assessments. EL, compliance adjustments. Evan Lang, he hadn't just taken the role, he'd taken the record. Every outline, every negotiation brief, every color-coded annotation I had built over 14 months, he hadn't even changed the formatting, just overwritten my initials with his. I flipped through one of the contracts. The wording was identical from the clause headers to the transitional language I'd created specifically to ease tension between German legal teams and our Toronto-based compliance staff. I remember drafting it while stuck overnight at Heathrow, running on hotel espresso and instinct, and now it read prepared by Langwarn. A folder near the back caught my eye. I opened it. It was a printed slide from the original closing deck, the one shown at the board meeting. My face was on it, beside Aurora's COO, shaking hands over champagne. I remembered that day. I remembered the exhaustion, the relief. But across my face, in thick red ink, someone had drawn an X. The newer version of the slide had Evan's face cropped in. Same pose, same caption. I closed the folder carefully, sat back. The cubicle felt smaller than before, but not because of the walls. What got to me wasn't the demotion or the stolen credit, or even the red marker across my photo. It was the efficiency of it. The way it had all been wiped neatly, cleanly, as if I had never existed. That's the thing about professional erasure. It doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with replacement fonts and quiet hallway nods. It comes in the form of new email signatures and recycled talking points. They thought they'd taken everything: the desk, the role, the record, but they missed something. And it wasn't just pride. They took my title, but they didn't take my ink, and they didn't read the fine print. Clause 39, it was buried deep in the contract I had drafted for Aurora, a clause no one else noticed, because no one else stayed long enough to care. Not legal, not leadership, not Evan. They skimmed for signatures. I wrote for protection. The clause stated clearly, all post-deal operations, transition processes, and oversight responsibilities shall remain under the direction of Daniel Morgan. In the event of reassignment without written client approval, the agreement may be rendered null and void. Plain language, unambiguous, legally sound. But more than that, it was personal. I had written it after a dinner meeting in Munich, 6 weeks before signing. Aurora's COO, Marcus Barron, had looked me straight in the eyes and said, "We're not signing with Aeromax. Daniel, we're signing with you. If you're not overseeing it, we're out." I remember the moment clearly. A quiet wood-paneled restaurant tucked away near the Marienplatz. No laptops, just conversation over wine and mutual exhaustion. We got burned before. Marcus had told me the last firm pulled their lead 3 weeks after closing. The replacement was green, disconnected. The entire project crumbled. So I made him a promise off the record, but never off my mind. And I protected that promise the only way I knew how, in writing. I didn't tell anyone, not Mark Roy, not legal, not even the senior strategy team. I slipped clause 39C in myself, built into the middle of the transition section, not hidden, but unhighlighted. I knew they wouldn't read carefully. They never did. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the physical copy. My copy, still with my signature, still in my writing. The page was slightly creased from travel. I had kept it tucked in the sleeve of my work planner just in case. Apparently, just in case had arrived. 3 days later, Evan flew to Munich. I didn't get a farewell, didn't even get a CC on the itinerary. I heard about his departure from a junior marketing associate who asked if I was still handling European compliance. I smiled. Not anymore. What Evan didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Aurora's HQ wasn't just a name on a building to me. I knew the elevators, knew the espresso brand in the lobby, knew the assistant's preference for PDFs over PowerPoints. I had built a relationship not just on numbers, but on trust. And Clause 39C was a promise made tangible. When the email arrived, it hit Aeromax like a winter storm no one had forecast. Subject: contract status, violation of Clause 39C. Aurora's legal team didn't sugarcoat a thing. We do not recognize the reassignment of post-deal oversight. Effective immediately. No further meetings will proceed. The agreement stands void unless Mr. Morgan resumes lead status. They copied everyone. Mark, Evan, legal, even the investor relations team. The silence that followed was louder than any boardroom speech. I didn't gloat. Didn't forward the message. Just sat at my cubicle, sipping coffee, watching the office around me shift from indifference to panic. People whispered in hallways. Meeting rooms filled suddenly. I saw Mark pacing in his office, phone pressed too tightly to his ear. Evan, he didn't even come in that day. One of the procurement managers passed by and muttered, "Is it true? You wrote that clause." I didn't respond, because power doesn't shout. It waits, written in ink, hidden in plain sight, and perfectly timed. By the time the board realized what Clause 39C truly meant, the damage had already started to bleed through. Aurora had gone quiet, not angry, just absent. And in corporate diplomacy, silence from a billion-dollar client is louder than any lawsuit. I showed up every day that week, pressed shirt, polished shoes, same AGO sang arrival, like nothing had happened. Like I wasn't the man they tried to replace and erase. But now, they didn't know where to look when I passed. Mark stopped, leaving his door open. Evan walked faster in the halls, head down, face pale, and yet, not a single person came over to speak to me directly. No apology, no explanation, just hallway glances and half-finished Slack messages. I could see in the corner of my screen before they were deleted. Instead of retaliating, I began building, not a case, a plan. During lunch breaks, I reconnected with colleagues I hadn't spoken to in years, engineers I flew with to Zurich, legal contacts from my Montreal posting, two former Aeromax executives now quietly leading strategy teams at competitors. I didn't ask for favors. I asked questions, strategic ones. If someone with deep European compliance experience were available this quarter, would your team consider a conversation? Has morale shifted on your international operations team since the restructuring? What's your read on Aeromax's midterm trust with Aurora? The responses came quietly, but they came. People remembered, not the headlines, not the org charts. Me, because you can take someone's title, you can even overwrite their reports, but you can't rewrite how they made others feel in the moments that mattered. On Thursday, during a quiet afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, Washington, D.C. area code. Daniel Morgan, a calm, professional voice asked. Yes, I said, glancing at the screen. This is Allison Kerr. I'm an independent contract law attorney. I just reviewed the Aurora agreement, specifically Clause 39C. I sat upright. I believe you authored that clause. She continued. I did, I replied, careful with my tone. There was a pause. Then, she said, it's elegant, direct, ironclad, no ambiguity. They don't realize what they signed. Do they? I exhaled slowly, a wave of relief and confirmation washing over me. No, I said quietly. They don't. I just thought you should know. She added, from a legal standpoint, that clause was the smartest page in the deal, and they walked right past it. When the call ended, I didn't speak. I didn't move. Just stared at the soft glow of my monitor, one hand resting lightly on the drawer that still held the original contract. My ink, my name. That evening, the office dimmed around me. Lights flicked off, section by section. People whispered near the elevators, but I stayed seated because I wasn't just holding a contract anymore. I was holding the one thread they never saw coming, and I wasn't going to pull it yet, not until it wrapped them back in everything they tried to leave me out of. Evan left for Paris on Monday morning. Business class, Aeromax issued briefcase, and the same smug confidence I used to wear before I realized what trust really cost. I heard he smiled the entire time through pre-boarding. Someone from HR even said he'd posted a ready-to-represent selfie before the flight took off. He didn't know Aurora's headquarters had changed their entire reception process after my last visit. He didn't know the COO's assistant, Isabel, preferred emails without attachments, or that the 10th floor espresso machine dispensed bitter coffee if you press the button twice. He didn't know that every hallway, every small request, every client nuance had been stitched into my understanding not by orientation or protocol, but by presence, and that's what Clause 39C really protected. Presence. The message from Aurora landed at 4:30 FUT, Paris time. A single email, no apology, no ambiguity. Subject line, contract status, personnel violation. Body, as per Clause 39C, this agreement is contingent on direct post-deal oversight by Mr. Daniel Morgan. Aurora does not recognize substitute leads. No further meetings will be held. We await reinstatement or formal withdrawal. They copied everyone. Mark, Evan, executive leadership. PR, even investor relations. The internal damage was instant. Slack channels lit up. Calendar invites were suddenly deleted. I heard whispers near the water cooler. Did you see the clause? Did they really miss that? One junior analyst, red-faced and wide-eyed, walked past my cubicle and muttered under his breath, "You actually wrote that line." I didn't say a word. I didn't have to, because when people start whispering your name again, not in pity, but in awe, that's when you know the tide has turned. An hour later, PR tried to spin it. A quick draft for a press note, something light. Adjustment in international onboarding to ensure stronger alignment. It never made it past draft 1. According to someone in comms, Mark ordered the thread wiped clean and instructed, no one says a word. No press, no leaks, but you can't erase what never made noise to begin with. And you can't control what clients share in their own circles. By 7 Jotoi, 3 board members had requested a closed-door meeting. Someone I'll never know who forwarded me a message from that internal chat. It read, "If Daniel was the only reason this deal held, why was he ever moved?" No one had an answer, because the only person who'd read the contract closely was me, and I hadn't raised my voice once. But now, even their silence was saying everything. I stayed late that night, not out of duty, out of intent. There's something profoundly quiet about watching a building panic around you while you stay still. The executive floor above me buzzed like a kicked beehive. I could hear the tension in the hallway. Voices too sharp for casual talk. Doors that never quite shut gently. I watched Evan leave without his blazer. A VP from finance walked out rubbing his forehead like the numbers themselves had betrayed him. And still, no one came to speak to me. They didn't know what to say. What could they? I didn't rub it in. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand a meeting. Because when you hold the last word, you don't need to speak. At exactly 9:15 Fusan the next day, my phone rang. I almost didn't pick up. It had been a long week, a long year. The number showed a Manhattan area code. "Daniel Morgan," the voice asked. Warm but precise. "Yes," I replied, sipping the now cold coffee in my hand. "This is Jonah Patel from Stradium Global," he said. "We spoke a few months ago." The timing wasn't quite right back then. I remembered. They'd made an offer, a generous one, to lead their international operations. I turned it down out of loyalty to Aeromax. But loyalty without respect is just quiet suffering. I'm hoping it's a better time now. Jonah continued, "We'd like to revisit our offer. With a few upgrades." He didn't hold back. Double the salary. Equity. A corner office at their new downtown Toronto HQ. Full relocation flexibility. And one more thing, a non-negotiable clause. But this time in my favor. "Marcus Barron reached out," Jonah added, "said you're the reason the deal ever worked. He's not moving forward on any future contracts unless your name is on them." I leaned back slowly in the same chair where I had once been erased. Jonah waited. "Respectfully, I appreciate the offer," I said, "but I have a few conditions." "Of course," he replied quickly. "Name them." "1," I said, "I choose my team. No exceptions. Every hire, every post-deal consultant I sign off. Done." And 2, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the envelope I had kept sealed since Munich. Marcus note. "To the one who carried weight with grace. I don't just want to lead deals," I said. "I want full lifecycle control, from strategy to closure to renewal. Start to finish." Jonah didn't even hesitate. "You'll have it." When the call ended, I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. I simply placed my phone face down, stood up, and looked out the window not at the skyline, but at the mirrored glass of Aeromax headquarters across the street, the same building that once silenced me, now watching as I stepped into the role they tried to bury. And I wasn't going quietly. There's a unique kind of silence that follows betrayal, not the loud, dramatic kind, but the heavy one that lingers in your chest. Daniel's journey wasn't just about winning back his seat at the table. It was about proving that when the world tries to erase you, sometimes the best response is to rewrite the rules. This isn't just one story. It's one of many for anyone who's ever been replaced, underestimated, or quietly dismissed. The lesson: patience pays. Strategy speaks louder than anger. And when you act with clarity, not chaos, you win with permanence. Thank you for watching until the end. If Daniel's story resonated with you, you're not alone and your voice matters. Drop a comment below. Share your story if you feel ready, or simply type 1 if you want more. office stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe together. We make sure no one feels invisible at work again.